Hello everyone and welcome to Fiction Friday. Today we have episode 25 of The Squire. I hope you enjoy it.
It's a soul box. Talia must have been in her casting chamber because she'd answered Cole's message minutes after he sent it. You need to leave at once and return to Celestia. This may be the discovery that lets us win the war. No one can know you were there. Leave the cave as you found it, avoid the village, and come back as fast as you can. Cole stared at the orb. That was her whole message. She wanted him to abandon the slaves and return to base. What the hell was a soul box, and what made it so important that she'd tell him to abandon innocent people to their fate? Orders or not, he couldn't leave those people to serve and eventually feed a bunch of beastmen. He liked and respected Talia as much as anyone he'd ever met, but he couldn't obey her in this and live with himself. Cole left the cave, and when he looked back, the illusion appeared just as he'd found it. Going back down proved trickier than going up, but he slipped and slid his way to the bottom. He swung around the village on about the same line as he'd taken on his approach. He turned toward the pine tree where he'd left Mariel. Mariel? No sign of the former guard or of a struggle. It didn't look like she'd gotten captured. So where was she? The moon had cleared the mountains while he made his way back, and in the better light, Cole spotted a few scuff marks. It looked like she'd gone toward the village on her own. Stupid. If any of the wolfmen spotted her and raised the alarm, they'd be screwed. He couldn't fight off a whole village, even if it was only females and kids. Cole hurried after Mariel, hoping to catch her before she got into trouble. Cole reached the edge of the village and found the body of a wolfman with a gray muzzle, its throat cut, still bleeding on the ground. It appeared he'd come the right way. He stepped over the body and headed deeper into the village. They'd built their huts on a massive stone ledge, so everywhere he looked, the ground was rock, which meant no tracks to follow. As usual, it looked like he'd have to guess. The start of a howl, quickly cut through the dark. The sound came from the right-hand path. It seemed he wouldn't have to guess after all. Cole jogged down the path and after a minute found Mariel standing over another dead wolfman. Cole hissed to get her attention. Mariel turned toward him, dagger raised. When she recognized him, she lowered it. He motioned her over to the shadow of a hut. "What are you doing?" he whispered. "I told you to wait for me." "I don't take orders from you. I said I wanted some payback," she said just as quietly. "If you were looking to commit suicide, you should have told me. Did you find the prisoners?" "Not yet." "Help me." Cole grabbed one of the dead beastman's legs and pulled it toward the darkness behind one of the huts. Halfway over, she grabbed the other leg and helped him. When he had the body out of sight, he dropped it. "What was the point of that?" she asked. "You don't suppose they might have some guards on patrol, do you?" Mariel blinked as though the idea never occurred to her. "Do you think they might?" "This is their home, and they're not that stupid, just savage and brutal. We need to be careful or we'll end up in a stew pot. Come on, let's find those people and get out of here." Cole turned toward the center of the village. He figured if the monsters had a place to keep the slaves locked up, it would be where the most eyes could watch them. He slipped from one shadow to the next, ears straining for any sign that a beastman had discovered their presence. The click of claws on stone warned him a moment before a pair of gray-furred wolfmen armed with curved swords walked by. Cole crouched in the shadow of a hut and threw an arm across Mariel's chest to keep her from attacking. When they'd gone, she whispered, "What are you doing? We can take 2 old wolfmen." "Sure we can, in the middle of their village surrounded by sleeping monsters. We make one loud noise and one of those things pokes its nose out to see what happened, and the next thing you know, we're surrounded. If you want to get yourself killed, be my guest, but wait until after we free the prisoners." "Fine. I guess I owe you that much for saving my life, but I'm questioning the courage of the Knights of Corinthia, and I'm questioning the intelligence of the Rel City Guard." Mariel flinched as though he'd slapped her. "How dare you? How dare you? What's the first responsibility of a guard? Come on, I doubt the oath in Rel differs from the one in Feingold. To serve and protect the people." Her voice trembled and tears ran down her cheeks. "I want to hurt them so bad." Cole put a hand on her shoulder. "I know. Believe me, I know. But your duty comes first. We protect the people we can protect, right? Right. She stepped away from him and wiped the tears from her eyes. Let's go do our job. Cole grinned. Finally, he'd gotten through to her. He led the way as they snuck deeper into the village. At the center, they found nothing but a fieldstone well in the middle of a round open space. Well, shit. Got another guess? Mariel asked. Cole closed his eyes and ran a hand through his hair. Where could they be? He frowned. The village butted up against the hill. If there were caves, that would make a good place to keep slaves. Even beastmen could put bars across a cave opening. I have a hunch. Cole swung wide of the village center as he picked his way toward the hill. The smell hit him about 100 yards out. The stench of unwashed bodies and shit. He suspected they were getting close. Cole crouched in the shadow of the last hut in the village. A 20-yard opening separated the village proper from a series of caves in the hill with bars across them. In the feeble light, people stood by the bars, staring out into the night like lost souls. 2 beastmen walked back and forth in front of the caves. Cole clenched his jaw. Farmers treated their animals better than this. You want to hurt them? Now's your chance. See that gray stone hut 4 down from us? Mariel nodded. Sneak over there, and when I give the signal, hit the guard closest to you. What's the signal? Cole picked up a loose pebble. I'll peg the one nearest you in the head. That'll get his attention so you can attack him from behind. I'll handle the other. Got it. She slipped away, quiet as an owl on the wind. Cole kept a close watch and a couple of minutes later glimpsed her dagger in the moonlight. He slid his sword free and took a breath to settle himself. When he'd calmed his racing heart, Cole's arm shot forward, followed a second later by a snarl of pain. The wolfman looked his way and Mariel leapt from the shadows. Cole didn't wait to find out how she did. The moment she broke cover, he charged the second monster. It had time enough to turn partway toward him before Cole's broadsword hacked into its neck, half severing its head. He spun and found his partner standing over a bleeding wolfman. By now, the slaves had gathered around the bars. Cole held a finger up to his lips, and the people obliged him by not shouting for his attention. He patted down his dead opponent, but found no key. He looked up, and Mariel waved a key ring at him. Cole nodded and motioned her to open the doors. He kept scanning the village for signs of movement. Everything looked quiet. How long had it been since anyone had attacked one of their villages? He looked back in time to see her unlock the last door. 2 fairly healthy-looking men rushed over and relieved the dead beastmen of their weapons. The moment they got weapons, the 2 men and half a dozen unarmed people, both men and women, raced toward the nearest hut, went in, and a moment later snarls and squeals of pain followed. The group emerged, hands and weapons covered in blood. They didn't say a word, but immediately advanced on the next hut. Behind him, other groups were slaughtering females and young on the other side of the village. Cole said nothing. It wasn't his place to stop them or even question their actions. Cole saw no sign of Mariel. She probably joined in as soon as she finished freeing the last of the slaves. Howls echoed deeper in the village. It sounded like one of the beastmen lived long enough to sound a warning. Cole doubted it would make much difference. The bloodlust was on the freed slaves now, and nothing less than the death of all their tormentors would slake it. He went to the first cave and found it empty of people. Only a layer of straw and a couple of buckets remained behind. Cole moved on to the second cave and found a wrinkled man with a scuffy white beard dressed in rags leaning against the wall. He had a red line on his thin chest. Are you all right? Cole helped the old man out and eased him to the ground.
Thank you, young man.
He took a deep, wheezing breath.
My lungs have been bothering me. Those beasts marked me for tomorrow's dinner pot. If you hadn't come along tonight, I'd be dead.
Cole squeezed his shoulder. I'm glad I got here in time. Can I do anything for you? The old man shook his head.
I just want to enjoy the fresh air.
Cole shuddered at the stink in the air. If the old man thought this was fresh air, what had he gotten used to? He left the old-timer resting and moved on to the next cave. He found it and the next empty. In the last, he found an old woman with a strip of filthy cloth across her eyes sitting in the disgusting straw.
Is that you, champion? Have you found the lie?
Cole's eyes widened. She was a truth seer. I did, priestess. Did you guide me here? The old woman wheezed a harsh laugh.
The lie has grated on me since we arrived. I did not try to call you, but my distress may have touched you.
She reached out and he took her hands. Bony fingers groped around until she found the ring.
Like calls to like. This connects us. It connects you to all truth seers.
I don't understand. Mystic stuff is beyond me. I'm just a simple soldier. Can I take you out of here?
Please, I have little strength left.
Cole scooped her up. She felt frail, like a skeleton covered in a thin layer of skin. He carried her out of the cave and set her down a little ways from the old man. Cole suspected the beastmen didn't eat her because there was no meat on her bones. Why did the monsters spare you, priestess?
Fear. They're superstitious creatures, and they sensed the power in me and left me to my own devices.
She coughed a great hacking wheeze of a cough.
Some days I wished they'd finished me.
Don't say that, priestess. Life is far too precious to wish it away, especially now. She patted his knee.
You're very kind, boy. I see why the power chose you. I can also see you know little about it. Some things you must learn on your own. But I can tell you the ring lets you do more than see illusions. It can also destroy them. You need only command it to do so. Now let me rest. It won't be long before the others finish their work.
Slaughter, more like it, but Cole didn't correct her. He moved a few steps away and spotted Mariel walking towards him. Blood covered her arms from the elbow down. She looked like something from a campfire horror story. She dropped her dagger, slumped to the ground a few feet from him, and wrapped her arms around her knees. It didn't help. After the fifth one, it didn't even feel good anymore. I know. Let's get you cleaned up. Cole led her to a barrel half filled with water a short ways from the caves, probably for the guards if they got thirsty during their watch. He took the dipper out and poured water over her hands and arms. Mariel scrubbed, and he kept pouring until he ran out of water. She kept rubbing until the skin turned red under her fingers. Cole grabbed her hands. It's okay. The blood's gone. Mariel looked down at her hands. I can still feel it. It's okay. It's only your imagination. I killed a female, and when it was dead, I gutted the little one behind her. It squealed like a puppy and cried like a child. Tears streamed down her face. Cole held her while she cried. He suspected she needed the crying more than the killing. She wiped the tears from her eyes and stepped back. Better? He asked. Mariel nodded. Some of the people were coming back in 2s and 3s. They looked haunted, eyes wide and staring like they'd seen things, done things they couldn't get out of their heads. Well, at least they were free. Now, how was he going to get them back to Celestia in one piece?
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Fiction Friday. If you liked what you heard, you can find more of my fiction on my website, jamesewisher.com. Please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with anyone else you think might enjoy the show. Until next week, goodbye.